Diane Macedo today on ABC News Live. President Biden signs a bill after Congress steps in to avert a rail strike. A walkout could have devastated the economy. Here why one of the largest rail unions says the deal tramples on workers. The latest jobs report is out as gas prices plummet. What it all means for the economy and inflation just in time for the holidays. And the new investigation shining a light on alleged racism in the housing industry. What the findings tell us about how homes of families of colors are appraised and what's being done about it. But we begin with President Biden signing a bill to avert a rail strike. The measure passed with bipartisan support and imposes a deal that some unions rejected. ABC's Jay O'Brien joins me live now for more on that. Jay, what exactly does this bill do?
So this was a bill that the White House tapped Congress to step in on. So earlier this week, as you recall, the House passes this legislation in addition to another piece of legislation that gives an extra 7 days of sick leave to the rail workers. Then it goes to the Senate. The Senate rejects those extra 7 days of paid sick leaves, but votes up on the bill 80-15. What it does is it essentially agrees to the earlier deal that was struck by the White House, or that was brokered rather by the White House between the rail companies and the rail workers. And it approves that agreement without the rail workers say so. So it compels those rail workers back onto the job without them agreeing to that deal that was brokered by the White House.
Now, Jay, the Senate failed to pass this sort of secondary part, this other legislation that would have guaranteed the workers paid sick days, which was the holdup on this deal, at least the central one. President Biden, though, says he still thinks that could happen. How?
Yeah, the question is, what is his plan going forward? He said early on that he regretted not being able to get those 7 days of paid sick leave in that initial deal that was brokered by the administration. But he went on to say, as it relates to paid sick leave, the fight isn't over. What he's planning to do going forward, though, is an open question, whether that's a legislative priority of his or some other avenue. If it is a legislative priority of his, though, there are some impediments to that. You have to get 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate. And because of Democrats' slim majority there, it has to be bipartisan legislation. And also, of course, come January, there will be a Republican-controlled House, Diane.
And, Jay, there are so many different deadlines ticking, it feels right now. This is one thing out of the way. So what happens with this pending government shutdown? How are negotiations going to try to fund the government?
Well, come December 16th, there has to be some kind of a deal, you're exactly right, to fund the government, whether or not that's a longer-term funding or what is the Plan Z here, lawmakers have said, which is a continuing resolution that funds the government for a year. But federal agencies have said that that would have a serious impact on their operations. And lawmakers of both parties, Nancy Pelosi said yesterday, in fact, that that is the worst-case scenario, that they did some kind of a CR. We do know that lawmakers are still meeting. They are still trying to hammer out a deal. They are still far apart on that deal. Nancy Pelosi said that yesterday. But we are hearing from lawmakers and others here on Capitol Hill who say they are encouraged that those talks are still ongoing.
Jay, they also have to raise the debt ceiling to keep the U.S. from defaulting on loans, and yet we're not hearing much about that in Washington. What's happening there?
There was a conversation as to whether or not in this current lame duck Congress, before the new Congress comes in January, if Democrats were going to push to try to raise the debt ceiling and avert some kind of a clash with Republicans come January. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, so that is something Congress is going to take up next year, Diane.
So, Jay, what are the priorities that Democrats are looking at heading into January, knowing they will lose control of the House as soon as the new year starts?
Well, right now, the most urgent thing on their plate is that deal on government funding. There has to be some kind of an agreement by December 16th, unless Congress wants to have a very long December here on the Hill. But also Democrats, as you had said, are laying out their new leadership structure. They have new Democratic leadership. Hakeem Jeffries obviously taking over for Nancy Pelosi. So they're positioning themselves to be in the minority now and also to deal with this new House GOP majority, which has their own set of priorities, border security being one, and investigations into the Biden administration being some others.
And, Jay, how are things shaping up in the battle over who's going to lead Republicans in the House?
Well, Kevin McCarthy has his work cut out for him to become the next Speaker of the House. He's certainly poised to take that job. There is an early vote in January. He's been nominated by his party to become the next Speaker of the House, but he's got to survive that vote in early January. He needs 218 to become the next Speaker of the House. There are 5 House Republicans who have said they will not vote for McCarthy. under any circumstances, so he cannot afford to lose even more votes than that, and even that imperils his current position as Speaker. But what you hear from those in McCarthy's camp and his supporters here on the Hill is that there is still ground to cover between now and January. McCarthy is meeting with GOP lawmakers now to try to potentially hash out some kind of a deal to get their support.
All right, Jay O'Brien, thank you. And early voting ends today in the key Georgia Senate runoff election. After polls close this evening, voters will have to show up next Tuesday to cast their vote for Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock or Republican challenger Herschel Walker. The vote will determine if the Senate is again split 50-50 with the vice president holding the tiebreaker vote, or if Democrats will have a 51-49 majority. Senior national correspondent Steve Osunsami has the latest from Atlanta.
One of the most popular Democrats in America came to Georgia Wednesday night to try and get U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock reelected.
You deserve a senator you can be proud of.
At a rally in Atlanta, former President Barack Obama told the crowd to get to the polls and give Democrats, who still control the U.S. Senate, more votes than they have right now.
What's the difference between 50 and 51? The answer is a lot. It prevents one person from holding up everything.
It was Obama's second visit to Georgia this election season, and he recorded this campaign spot before his visit.
Re-elect my friend and your senator, Reverend Raphael Warnock.
This race is about character and competence.
On the other side of the race, Republican nominee and college football legend Herschel Walker has finally gotten the public support of the most popular Republican in Georgia, the state's newly re-elected governor.
I'm backing Herschel, and I hope you'll join me in voting for him, too.
Walker surprised people in his own party when he wasn't seen on the campaign trail for several days around the Thanksgiving holiday. And he's been keeping even more distance from reporters.
I'm going to fight for Georgia because Georgia born, Georgia bred. When I die, I'll be Georgia dead.
There are some people who believe that the new election laws that were passed after the 2020 election, where Democrats did very well here, that reduced the number of early voting days from about 17 to 5, were purposefully meant to keep voters in some of the bluer counties from voting. But there has been a surprise, Diane. In some cases this week, records were broken. Diane?
A lot of people want to vote. Steve Osunsami, thank you. And the Department of Labor Statistics says the U.S. economy added 263,000 jobs last month, up from 261,000 in October. The unemployment rate remains unchanged at 3.7%. Meanwhile, AAA says gas prices are down to their lowest level since February. ABC News Chief Business Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis is here to break it down for us. Hi, Rebecca.
What this report tells us is that hiring remains robust. The U.S. added 263,000 new jobs in the month of November, that wages continue to climb. They're not keeping up with inflation, but they are up 5.1% from a year ago. And then you have fewer people in the workforce. You take all of this collectively together in concert with historically high inflation, and it gives the Federal Reserve cover to keep hiking interest rates aggressively. They have a new announcement on that coming up later this month. It very likely will be another significant rate hike. And if you look at what's already happened to borrowing costs this year, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage has more than doubled, now 7.3%. APRs on credit cards, 22% now. That means if you are spending on a credit card over this holiday season and not paying off those bills on time, it is going to cost you exponentially more because of rates climbing. So you want to really think twice before you take on that new plastic. At the same time, we have started to see a turn in prices, in particular gasoline prices, which Gas Buddy is now predicting will drop below $3 a gallon come Christmas. But there are other areas like the grocery store where eggs are 43% higher, coffee is still up 15%, rents up 7.5%, which still have to come down significantly more. The bottom line here is the Fed is on a path to continue hiking interest rates. And so far, even though we've heard things from, for example, the tech space where there are layoffs, we're not seeing that more broadly in the economy. Diane?
All right, Rebecca Jarvis, thank you. Russian shelling has cut off power in much of the recently liberated Ukrainian city of Kherson. Moscow continues to pummel civilian infrastructure as Ukraine sees freezing temperatures. ABC News foreign correspondent Marcus Moore is in Dnipro, Ukraine, with the latest.
Winter has arrived in Ukraine as Russian airstrikes leave millions of residents without electricity. In Kyiv, more than 600,000 people faced power outages on Thursday, and this morning, 20% are still in the dark. Kyiv's Mayor Vitaly Klitschko describes a dire situation.
Without heating, without water, without electricity, it was pretty dangerous for our citizens.
But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov defending the strikes, claiming these stations, quote, are critical for the delivery of a huge amount of weapons that the West pumps into Ukraine. Lavrov accusing the U.S. and NATO of directly participating in the war by arming and training Ukrainian troops. In Washington, President Biden and French President Macron reaffirming their support for Ukraine, and Biden opening the door to a direct conversation with Vladimir Putin.
I'm prepared to speak with Mr. Putin if, in fact, there is an interest in him deciding he's looking for a way to end the war.
And Diane, our team here in Ukraine has spoken with President Zelensky's office, and they have responded this morning to that development, saying that President Zelensky will not negotiate until the very last Russian soldier has left Ukrainian territory. And in his evening address last night, he has proposed measures that would ban religious groups from operating in Ukraine, that those groups that have ties to Moscow, saying that they will never allow anyone to build an empire in the Ukrainian soul. And Diane, people here in Ukraine have been bracing for another wave of airstrikes like the ones that crippled the power grid here. And the mayor of Kyiv has said that another hit on their infrastructure, it's possible that some in the capital city could be left without power until spring. Diane.
Wow, Marcus Moore from Ukraine, thank you. Coming up, the exclusive interview with a man who fell overboard while on a Thanksgiving cruise. Hear how he says he tread water for nearly 20 hours. Also ahead, the alleged racism in real estate. Some families of color are getting lowballed on home appraisals. What's being done about it when we come back? Welcome back. We are hearing from an Alabama man who spent 20 hours treading water in the Gulf of Mexico after falling from a cruise ship. He's now sharing his incredible survival story and rescue in an ABC News exclusive. Eva Pilgrim has that story.
It was a Thanksgiving to remember.
James Michael Grimes knows he's lucky to be alive.
My worst fear is drowning, and that was something I did not want to have to face.
The 28-year-old going overboard a cruise ship in the middle of the night, saying he spent about 20 hours treading water alone in the Gulf of Mexico.
I wanted to see my family, and I was dead set on making it out of there. You know, I was never accepting that this is it. This is going to be the end of my life.
It was supposed to be a Thanksgiving celebration. James Michael and 18 of his family members boarding the Carnival Valor last Wednesday in New Orleans.
We were just hanging out, having a good time, watching some live music, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Did you have a few drinks?
I had during the day, and I'd actually did like an air guitar solo, and there was a competition they were doing, and I'd won it, so I'd won a free drink, so I had that, but...
But you hadn't had, like, you weren't, like, inebriated, had, like, a ton of drinks?
No, ma'am. No.
How many drinks do you think you'd had?
I couldn't really say.
Around 11 p.m. that first night on board, James Michael told his sister he was going to the bathroom. What happened next is still unclear.
Do you remember leaving and going to find the bathroom?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember falling off the boat?
No.
So you don't know how it happened?
No, ma'am. I came to regain consciousness. I was in the water with no boat in sight.
So you, for a while, were passed out in the water?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. And I can't float myself, even when I'm trying to. So there had to be, you know, the Lord was with me when I was out there, because something was holding me up the whole time while I was passed out.
The next day, when he hadn't returned to his cabin, his family alerted the ship's crew. At 2:30, more than 12 hours after James Michael was last seen, Carnival notified the Coast Guard of a missing passenger.
We did have a fairly significant search area. It was a potential of over 7,000 miles of ocean we had to search.
James Michael was alone in an area known to be a feeding ground for sharks.
I thought it was a shark. I mean, I was swimming in one direction, and I looked around, and I seen it at the corner of my eye, and it came up on me really quick. And I went under, and I could see it, and it wasn't a shark, I don't believe, but it had more like a flat mouth, and it came up and bumped one of my legs, and I kicked it with the other leg. It scared me, not knowing what it was, or at the time how big it was. All I could see was a fin.
The avid outdoorsman tried to stay positive and calm. Exhausted and hungry, he ate what he could find to maintain his energy.
A stick come floating by, looked like bamboo. So I started eating on it, and it actually, I mean, I'm not gonna say it tasted good, but it gave some type of flavor in my mouth other than salt water.
Was there any point while you were out there where you thought, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this?
When it started getting back towards nighttime again, the water started getting colder. At that time, I thought, you know, how much longer am I gonna have to be out here?
Yeah, but you just kept swimming?
Yes, ma'am. You know, the fall didn't kill me. You know, sea creatures didn't eat me. I felt like I was meant to get out of there.
As the sun was going down Thanksgiving night, James Michael says he spotted a glimmer of hope, the lights from a tanker ship, and decided to swim towards it.
That was my final little burst of energy. The strength that I had, I used pretty much every bit of it to try to make it to one of them.
The Coast Guard then arriving, his miraculous rescue captured on camera.
When the Coast Guard got there,
yeah,
what happened?
They circled the boat 2 or 3 times looking for me, and you know, I'd done taken off my socks and everything and was just waving them around my head, trying to do something where they would see me. And when that light finally hit me, somehow I heard, "We got him." And I seen a guy coming down from that helicopter, and it was coming towards me. You know, right then I thought, man, I see the light.
When the Coast Guard guy showed up in the water, what'd you say to him?
Well, the first thing I actually told him was, I don't have any clothes on. Because I didn't. I'd been stripped out of everything. He said, that's fine. All right, and I was just like, okay. And he told me to hold on to this life vessel, and I was just thinking, thank you. You know, you're like a guardian angel coming down for me.
His rescuers believe he was seconds away from not making it.
I swam to it as fast as I could. As I got to him, I shoved the rescue sling under his arms, and he collapsed into it. He had nothing left.
James Michael says the whole experience has given him new purpose.
These were actually the pants that I'd planned on wearing on the cruise, but never got to. And I put them on this morning, and I reached in the pocket, and there was something, there's a fortune, and it says, "Life's a beach, enjoy the waves."
Do you think it changed you?
Yes, definitely. It opened my eyes. I take things for granted, I reckon, or a lot of people do.
Do you think you'll go on a cruise ship again?
Yeah, I will.
Really?
Yeah. I ain't gonna let it discourage me that much. I might not get within 10 foot of the rails, but I'll definitely be open to going on another cruise, because I really didn't get to go on this one.
Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that interview. And Carnival tells us they have safety barriers in all public areas to prevent guests from falling. And we're getting a revealing new look at racism in the home appraisal industry. The new documentary, Our America Lowballed, shows how one black family saw the value of their home increase by almost $500,000 after using a strategy known as whitewashing. Janae Norman has that story.
So my mom's house is the blue house.
Paul Austin loves Marin City. Born and raised in the historically black neighborhood just north of San Francisco, he and his wife Tanisha take pride in their home. After some major renovations, the couple had their home appraised, and the value was hundreds of thousands of dollars less than what they expected.
We was pretty stunned by what she put in the report.
I was angry and scared, too, because, you know, there was so much on the line.
They opted for a second opinion, this time enlisting the help of a white family friend to stand in as the homeowner.
We had a conversation with one of our white friends, and she is like, no problem, I'll be Tanisha.
A strategy unofficially known as whitewashing.
Whitewashing is taking down your family pictures, your artwork, your hair products, your clothing, your shoes, anything that could lead someone to saying, I think this person might be black. I think this person might be Latino.
So it appraised for 1.482.
Almost 1.5, $500,000 more.
The Austin story, just one of several homeowners profiled in the documentary Our America Lowballed, spotlighting alleged home appraisal discrimination and the systemic impact it has on families of color.
So the property was never the question. It was who was occupying the property at the time of the appraisal that was the question.
What we found after looking at more than 50 million refinance applications is that in predominantly black neighborhoods, they're almost 5 times more likely to be lowballed or underappraised.
The documentary also taking a look at the diversity of licensed appraisers across the United States.
The appraisal industry is not diverse at all. One analysis showed that when it comes to the appraisal industry, 96% are white and just 4% are people of color. That's a huge disparity.
And this reporting on the devaluation of Black and Latino homes has spurred new state laws and led President Biden to create the Property Appraisal Valuation Equity Task Force to identify solutions to root out appraisal bias. Our America Lowballed is streaming today on Hulu and online at lowballed.abc. Diane?
Eye-opening, Janae. Thank you. Coming up, Team USA is getting ready to face off against the Netherlands at the World Cup tomorrow. But can they do it without their star player? More on that when we return. The U.S. men's national soccer team is getting ready to play the Netherlands tomorrow in the World Cup. The winner moves on to the quarterfinals. But the big question now is, will the U.S. have to play without star player Christian Pulisic after he was injured while scoring against Iran in the last game? MLSsoccer.com host and former Major League player Caitlin Carr is here with more on this. Caitlin, thanks for joining me. What do we know about Pulisic's injury at this point? You think he'll play?
Yeah, Diane, this is what everybody is paying attention to right now. And it should be mentioned, you know, he did such a fantastic job really sacrificing his body and going in for that goal. He knew there was going to be contact and he had to be substituted at halftime and did not able to return to the match and sent a selfie from the hospital saying, hey, I'll be back, be ready for this next match. So that was a positive sign. And I think he's out on the pitch today. I saw a report from training that he's out there today in cleats. That is a positive sign. The other thing that came from the press conference was he was asked if it meant so much to him to get a goal and to finally have that iconic moment with the U.S. men's national team. Of course, remember, he was a part of that team that missed the last World Cup. That was supposed to be his moment. And his response was, I hope this isn't my moment yet. And I love that because what it revealed was he's hoping for more. He pointed to the future. He pointed to this next match. I would expect to see him from the start. And I love that revealed a piece of the personality of this team that is always hungry for more and really wants to go up against this Netherlands side.
And that can make such a big difference. So what do we know about this Netherlands team and what do you think the U.S. needs to do to beat them?
But the Netherlands were, you know, probably one of the top 8 teams in the tournament coming in as far as rankings go, and you know, have players playing at the highest level. Virgil van Dijk at Liverpool is one of the world's best defenders. Gakpo has emerged in this tournament, has been on fire, has scored a goal in each match, left foot, right foot, scored a header. He can really do it all. So he'll be dangerous to watch. I think the U.S. will really want to try and control that middle and midfield. And that's where the captain, Tyler Adams, comes in. He's been so important for the U.S. men's national team. I saw him grow up in Major League Soccer, did a fantastic job here, and you know, now playing in the Premier League. So if he can really help them in transition to win the ball and getting out in transition, I think that is where we'll find success.
All right, Caitlin Carr, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And thank you at home for joining us. I'm Diane Macedo. Do stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.